so that they get to come up with that. I use a guideline when I'm meeting with people of what I call 5-40-15. 5-40-15 represents, in a standard hour session that I'm meeting with somebody, I'll talk for about 5 minutes. I say, but you're the coach. You're going to talk for 5 minutes? I'm going to talk for 5 minutes, probably max. There's probably a number of sessions I talk a lot less than that. The 40 is the amount of time that the individual I'm working with speaks. And let's see, if I take an hour, that's 60 minutes. There's 15 minutes left. What happens with the other 15 minutes? You catch up and chat and whatever? No. Literally, with the coach, you might have 15 minutes of no discussion, no sound. What is happening is high processing is going on in the mind of the client because of questions that have been asked. When I would ask somebody, that says that they wanted to lose weight, how much? That might be a 40 to 60 second thought process to figure that out. They've never thought that through. And then when I come back with a zinger that says by when, it's like, oh, great, now I got to figure that out. So the eyes go into the head again, and they're getting clear. When they begin to get clear, it sets the stage for the next steps that can happen as a coach. So the 5-40-15 is a much different approach from most other roles that you would work with to try to help somebody. And again, working with just individual people as friends and interacting and using some coaching techniques, no, you don't need to use the 5-40-15 because it's not like you're going to cut your friend off. Hey, it's an hour. I listen to you as a coach. This thing's over and let's go on. But the concept is one that's very powerful, especially if you allow them to be the people that come up with their own solutions. An analogy that I've used in the past is somebody says, I need to figure out how to better exercise. And as a coach, again, I'm not going to say, okay, well, how about if you did 20 push-ups a day and I'm going to say, what's the best way for you? How could you start that exercise program? And then the head goes up, the eyes go into the forehead. Usually, good question. And then it's like, you know what? I drop off Tommy to school, both in the morning and I pick him up at night. I wait in the parking lot there at school, at his grade school, for about 15 minutes every night. There's a jungle gym set there. You know what? If I did 5 pull-ups on their little jungle gym bar, I would feel like I'm actually starting to move. And I already have that built into my schedule. How about if I commit to 3 times over the next week when I'm picking up my son? I'll just go and I will do those pull-ups. The interesting thing is when we see movement in our life, all of a sudden it starts to flow. You guys familiar with the flywheel principle in the Good to Great book? It's like you slowly get it going. It is so much fun. And incidentally, I'm doing coaching now. I love to see people's lives change. My biggest paycheck is when I go to bed at night. And it's like I come down to the kitchen and tell my wife, dear, I would never have come up with a solution that they came up with. And then at the next session, often, not always, but often, the client shows up and he says, hey, I told you I was going to do those pull-ups, a couple of times this past week. It felt so good. I did 7 on Monday. I did it again on Tuesday. I did it again on Wednesday. I did it all 5 days because it felt so good. I can now say I am starting down the path of exercising. But I'm exercising based on a solution that the client came up with that fits into their life, not a solution that a coach provided for them. Such a powerful way to look at things. I got this analogy from Cynthia with the John Maxwell team when I first started getting into coaching, and I thought, this is cool. I love this. I had to go out. And we sold our house so I could buy this really expensive gem. Well, actually, I think it was Marshall for $4.99. I could get a crystal. But as far as I'm concerned, this looks. Can you guys see the little sparkle there?
Yeah.
The coaching is a priceless gem for clients because the things that it provides that you cannot get anywhere else include. It's all about them. Here, I love this. Where else do you spend 60 to 90 minutes totally talking about you? Nothing else. I always ask at the end of my sessions, what is it that you most got out of the session? So I hear specifically what people had that related to them and what they're going to make progress on. One of the things I did at the end of an engagement with a woman that I'd worked with for 5 sessions, I said, how would you describe this coaching? One of the phrases that she used that I thought was really interesting, Andrea is her name, she said, we went through these 5 sessions, generally an hour, sometimes they went a little long, I kind of say 60 to 90 minutes. She said, you didn't ever talk about yourself. Not once. In all those sessions, every time we sat down, it was 100% talking about me and my life. There was no two-way ounce to it. So one of the reasons that coaching is a priceless gem is because it is totally focused on the client. The client identifies the agenda for each meeting, identifies the goal that we're going to go after, actually identifies the options of how they can move forward, and after all that's done, at the end, they identify anything that they want to commit to doing. And as a coach, I don't put any pressure on anybody to make any commitments. But the reality is, you know what happens when you go in a person's motivation? One of the things I also build into my coach-client agreement is how much time are you willing to spend a week on the things we talk about? And I've had cases, numerous times, where somebody says, I'm going to do these 9 things. I'm going to do these 9 things. And it's like, I thought on your coach agreement, you said 1 to 2 hours a week. You're telling me you're going to do 9 things. You know what's happened on occasion at a Panera, sitting across from Harry? Harry looks at me, his casual hand goes into a fist, and he goes, I am going to do these things. These are important to me. They're going to help me get to my life. I'm going to do these things. I don't care if I said 1 to 2 hours. I'm going to make these changes. And the reality is change does happen because we've gone in a motivation where they want to go with a solution that they have come up with. It's possibility focused. So repeatedly as a coach, it's how could you? One of the things, people just, I just don't know what I could do. I want to start a business, but I just don't have any sense of how I could do that. Well, one of the things, and I'm going to jump to the clarity one again. It's like, what kind of business do you want to have? I don't know, maybe gardening. What kind of gardening? Oh, good question. Anyway, so we go down that path so that they begin to get clear on that individual piece. And then we talk about what are some possibilities. Who else is running a business like you're running? How did they do it? How could you find out? The interesting piece is the window of time. So often when we interact with people, I say, hey, Tim, I ask him a key question, and the bottom line is, he knows because I asked the question, he needs to be able to get back to me. What's your favorite color? It's like, so say Tim doesn't know what his favorite color is. It's like, he's waiting on me, I gotta, it's red, because he asked me a question, so I've got to respond quickly. In the case of a coach, he knows he's got all the time in the world. If he needs 20 minutes to come up with what color. Now, I might actually not ask the client what color they like, unless it was appropriate, but he knows he has all the time he needs to come up with his answer, and he's going to have a patient guy sitting there across from him that cares, not somebody that's tapping his fingernails. Okay, I ask a color, can't you come up with that, you idiot? That's the way a lot of people approach interaction. A coach is never going to be critical or look down on any response that you come up with. So, let's see if there's I love this. Well, I love all these. Did I mention that coaching is a priceless gem? A couple of the other ones, it's focused on learning. And we'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. But the reality is, I don't really care as a coach about your results coming out of a meeting. So one of the reasons I offer 2 free coaching sessions is because I think so few people really understand and know what it feels like to have a coach. The second session is where a lot of the magic happens. Because I meet with a Sally, and Sally had committed to go to the gym. Or eat out twice a week instead of 5 times a week. I mean, we got to get off of the gym and the weight thing. There's so many other aspects of life. But so Sally was going to only eat out twice instead of 5 times. Sally comes to the next session, and Sally is in a place where it's like, oh, great, I ate out 3 times, not 2. Facing the coach. Here we go. How hard is it going to be? Okay? As a coach, once somebody experiences that second session, I don't really care whether you went 12 times and ate out or if you went 2. What I care about is that you learned about your behavior and why you did what you did. So my orientation is going to be, tell me what happened. And Sally might say, well, I ate out 3 times. You know what's happening likely with Sally? This little self-talk voice in her head, while she's confessing to me that she only cut down 3 times of eating out, she hears this little subtle voice saying, you idiot! I knew that you could not cut down to only 2 times a week. You'll never get there. You are so lousy at self-discipline, you will never get there. This loud voice, so often, many of us have in our head. And so we live with that. We're going to show up with a coach, and we think we're going to get ripped again. The orientation is so different. That's why coaching is different. In that situation, Sally says, hey, I only made it, I ate out 3 times instead of 2. It's like, Sally, tell me what happened. So she begins to process the 3 times that she went out and what happened that caused that. Then I might say, what were you doing just before you went out the 3rd time? Oh, interesting, yeah. I was sitting in front of the TV and there was this great commercial for Applebee's. I love their ribs, and next thing you know, so we'll go down the path of discovering what actually happened and what did you learn from it about yourself. Often, I'll go down the path then, what would you have liked it to look like? Let's say it was last week all over again. I mean, I talked about how we don't talk about the past. We're going to talk about the past week, but we're not going to go back 20 years about the fact that you went out 3 times, okay? So, we'll talk about it, and I'll ask that question. What would you like it to look like? Oh, good question. And we're beginning, again, to process things that person has never thought through before. It's like, well, okay, the Monday one was okay, I felt good about that. You know what? It wasn't the 3rd one that I'm frustrated with. It was the 2nd one that I'm frustrated with. And you know what happened? And then again, they begin to process it. What would you have liked it to look like? Well, you know what? When so-and-so came over and invited me, I would have liked to have said, hey, I'm only going to eat out twice. So the bottom line is, again, the client is defining what they would have liked it to look like. We met, I don't know how many of you guys were in here earlier when Kareem spoke. He gave a great speech earlier this morning, and he talked about how when your mind experiences something, it's like a rubber band. When it stretches, it's never the same. And what is so fun, not funny, as a coach, is for me to watch people have discovery. Every time somebody's eyes go into their head, the home run of a coach, new territory is being experienced. Anytime somebody can rattle off my favorite color is blue, it didn't take any thinking. They already know that their color is blue. That's not something that he's, confused about. But it's oh, good question. We're going to new territory, and you're never the same. Once you process what it was and what you would have liked it to be, the next time that situation comes up, at very minimum, you're looking at that situation different because you've actually now defined specifically what it looks like. So it is a radically different approach. Clear thinking, we're talking about the future. Again, I could go on. We're going to talk about the partner. Let me hit the partner thing as well, and then we'll move on.